Hello, good people. Welcome back to the Kuhb Games YouTube channel. If you are here and you've clicked on this video, I'm not going to assume that you read the title or looked at the thumbnail, and I'm just going to go ahead and tell you that we are talking about an FTK deck today. I know a lot of people don't like FTK decks and all of that good stuff, so this may not be the one for you. However, I get asked a bunch of questions about this deck kind of all the time. A lot of people are confused on how it works. Just looking at it, it kind of doesn't look like a GOAT format deck, even though, of course, all of these cards are legal in GOAT format. So yeah, I just get a bunch of questions and wanted to cover the deck because a lot of people are interested in it. And, you know, a lot of people do like combo-y things. They like to see big, flashy decks do big, powerful things because it's almost like breaking the rules in a legal way, if that's some sort of way to say it. But yeah, this is DMOC launch, Spell Economics FTK, whatever you want to call it. I usually call it DMOC launch because I think it sounds a little bit cooler. And this is a deck that I've been playing for quite a bit recently. I've had two very close calls at a Worlds Invite, top 4 the GGP in Lexington, and got second in an Obelisk. Very sad into that one. I actually made it to the finals in the winner's bracket, so my opponent had to beat me 2 matches in a row, and my deck just decided to not function for 4 games in a row. Of course, that's the price you pay for playing a combo deck sometimes. You're going to have some consistency issues, but before I get any further into the deck, this was a list passed to me by Madcap. Pretty much any tournament that I do well in a paper tournament, especially, I'm playing a Madcap deck. Madcap is just awesome at building things that I like. So yeah, let's get into it. We're not actually going to play any matches in this video. The deck kind of does the same thing over and over, and I know a lot of people don't want to see like me sitting there just flipping over a bunch of cards or whatever, but we will go over a replay to go through that just to show you like how the deck like actually functions like out in the wild or whatever. And I'm going to pick a replay that's going to showcase sort of both sides of the deck. You have your full combo deck, and then you have the machine gate conversion side. But yeah, so let's just kind of get into the deck first, sort of talk about the cards, and then we're going to go over how the combo actually works, and then we'll get into that replay. So we only have 2 monsters in the deck. We have, of course, Dark Magician of Chaos, the deck's namesake, and then we have 1 copy of Toon Cannon Soldier. A lot of people have asked me, why do you even play the Toon Cannon Soldier when you very clearly want to get into DMOC? The reasoning for this is, well, several things. Toon Cannon Soldier can actually be a combo piece. You don't have to run as many copies of Mass Driver because Toon Cannon Soldier essentially does the same thing, but it's also searchable by Toon Table of Contents. So not only can you play Toon Table of Contents to thin out your deck and make your deck a little bit more consistent, but you can actually search up one of your combo pieces with it, and that is huge. Also, Toon Cannon Soldier is a normal summonable level 4, which works very well with Monster Gate because, you know, if you're not going to play any other monsters, you have to have something to, you know, be able to use your Monster Gate and stuff like that. So I do think Toon Cannon Soldier is a necessary part of the deck. I wouldn't consider cutting that. Past that, of course, we do have our 3 Toon Table of Contents to search up the Toon Cannon Soldier and thin out the deck. We have 1 copy of Heavy Storm and 3 copies of Giant Trunade. Obviously, you don't want your opponent interacting, though one of the things that I like about this deck is it can actually play through a lot of interaction, like Ring of Destruction, Torrential Tribute, a lot of stuff like that. The DMOC combo sometimes just doesn't care. Actually, the biggest interactions against the deck are stuff like Solemn Judgment, MST, Dust Tornado, Raigeki Break. All of those are very good if you don't have the Giant Trunade Heavy Storm, stuff like that. So you definitely want to be playing as much cards as you can to like mass clear the back row. You don't want to be playing stuff like MST because it's not as impactful, but 1 Storm, 3 Giant Trunade makes a whole lot of sense here. Then we get into our Reasoning Gate package. This is technically a Reasoning Gate deck. We have 3 copies of Monster Gate, and then we only have 2 copies of Reasoning. This is another question that I get asked a lot. Why only 2 copies of Reasoning in the deck? And essentially, Reasoning's not that great. Most people call 4 or 8 anyway, so it's very likely that one of your monsters is just going to be going to the graveyard. Say they call 4, you hit your Toon Cannon Soldier, well then you don't even get to your DMOC at all, and you don't get the Toon Cannon Soldier. So it's just kind of a disaster when your opponent calls the reasoning correct. So you really don't ever want multiples of this in your hand. So just 2 reasonings feels pretty good to me. Whenever I first started playing the deck, this was one of the things that I questioned as well. I thought, why would you not want all of the starters possible? Why would you not play 3 copies of Reasoning? And I was trying to find a spot in the deck for it. I was actually cutting, I can't remember what cards I was actually cutting to try to make it work, but the more that I played with the deck, the more I realized, yeah, you actually don't need that 3rd copy. And it is kind of funny. In the top 8 of GGP Lexington, my opponent was actually trying to decide whether to keep me goat locked or not, because I had 5 goats on the field, and it wasn't said out loud, but my opponent counted the number of each card in my graveyard and only found that I had 2 reasonings in the graveyard, and in fact decided to not attack my goat tokens, not pressure me, because they didn't want me to be able to reasoning. Of course, I didn't care about that. I was actually digging to Monster Gate and Giant Trunade so that I could get to my DMOC safely and win the game. So my opponent actually not pressuring me because they thought that there was a 3rd copy of Reasoning that I couldn't use because my field was clogged up was actually pretty big there. So that's kind of funny. Reasoning, of course, is still good. I would still play it in this deck, especially in conjunction with Premature Burial and Soul Release, which we'll get to later. But it is a little bit of a risky card. It's not like, the regular Reasoning Gate decks where you're often, you're pretty much going to hit a monster. Of course, sometimes your opponent can call it right, but generally you have such a wide variety of levels of monsters that you're going to get value out of it in some way. Also, of course, this deck does side into the Machine Gate strategy, so having some number of the reasonings in the main deck, of course, makes sense just to help out there as well. Past that, of course, we have 3 copies of Scapegoat to go with our Monster Gates. Scapegoat, also a very good stall card. You're not always going to have your combo pieces in hand at the beginning of the game, of course, so sometimes you do have to buy some time. Scapegoat, very good at that. Once again, going back to the fact that we only play 2 monsters and we only have 1 normal summonable monster, other than Reasoning Gate playing Fusilier Dragon and multiple Cranes and stuff like that. We do have to have other ways to get monsters on the board so that we can activate Monster Gate, and Scapegoat is just the best way of doing that. Past that, of course, we have Graceful Charity, Pot of Greed, and Card Destruction, also 2 copies of Upstart Goblin. We want all of the draw power that we can possibly get. And then we have 1 copy of Premature Burial. Obviously, Prima works very, very well with Dark Magician of Chaos and can also get another combo piece out of the graveyard with Toon Cannon Soldier, which is pretty big. And it makes your reasonings sometimes just be Monster Gates, really. So if you play the Reasoning, you already have your Toon Cannon Soldier in your hand. You know the opponent's going to call 8. You just play the Reasoning, you mill over to DMOC, you Premature Burial it back. Doesn't matter if they got it right or not. Past that, we have 2 copies of Good Goblin Housekeeping. This is a very interesting one. Most decks would opt to play, Jar of Greed, Reckless Greed, stuff that actually draws cards. It isn't a minus, but this deck actually is probably the only deck in GOAT format that can actually make good use of this card. And the reason for that is it can put DMOC back in your deck. DMOC in hand is awful. The only time it's ever good is if you have a Graceful Charity plus Premature Burial and you can just get it back that way. Then it's pretty good, but generally, you're not going to be able to summon this from hand. I have done it a couple of times. We do have Soul Exchange. We do have the 1 monster with Toon Cannon Soldier. I guess you could do double Soul Exchange, but it's generally not going to come up where you're going to be able to summon this from hand, so you need a way to get it back to the deck, and Good Goblin Housekeeping not only gets it back to the deck, but it gets it back to the bottom, which can be very huge. If you know the DMOC is on the bottom of the deck specifically, then if you're missing one of your combo pieces and you need to get it back with DMOC, then you're going to flip over that with your Monster Gate or your Reasoning, and DMOC will be able to pick that up. So a lot of times this card just leads to guaranteed wins, and you don't really care about the minus from playing the first one, though sometimes you do mill over one with Monster Gate or Reasoning, and you're able to just get that 2 card draw, which is pretty sweet with Good Goblin Housekeeping. Been having a lot of fun with this card. Just being able to play it in Go format feels so cool, and actually being able to take full advantage of the effect is awesome here. Love that. Past that, I know this deck is set up in an odd way here. I normally have my traps at the end and all of that, but there's a reason to that. We'll get to it later. Beyond that, we have 3 copies of Dimension Fusion. This is, of course, another combo piece. You need the Dimension Fusion to bring back your DMOC. It also works in conjunction with Soul Release to get your DMOC back if it was sent to the graveyard with like reasoning or something of that nature. So a lot of times Dimension Fusion can actually start your combo. Sometimes you get both of your pieces in the graveyard, you Soul Release them, and then Dimension Fusion becomes 2 combo pieces. Pretty nice. Not really a whole lot to say. It's Dimension Fusion. The card's busted. We have 2 copies of Mass Driver from there. Like I said before, you don't have to play more than 2 because you do have Toon Cannon Soldier and Toon Table of Contents. So you essentially have 6 copies of this combo piece. You do still want to play Mass Driver in the deck. You don't want to just play Toon Cannon Soldier because a lot of times you kind of don't have the Cannon Soldier. You get into your DMOC, you need to get the Mass Driver back with it. So you definitely do want the spell version of this combo piece. So you definitely want to play some number of Mass Driver, and 2 has worked out just fine. Past that, you have one of the other namesakes of the deck, if you call it Spell Economics FTK. You have Spell Economics. Don't have to pay life points to activate spell cards. Makes Dimension Fusion free. It also makes Premature Burial free, which has actually come up a few times where my life points have been lower than 800, but my DMOC's in the graveyard, play Spell Economics, get it back with Premature Burial, no problem. Past that, we have 3 copies of Spell Reproduction. This, of course, can get back any spell in your graveyard. This can be any of your combo pieces. If you have some in the graveyard, you need to get it back. A lot of times, you'll pick up a Graceful Charity, a Pot of Greed, a Card Destruction, something like that, just to dig through your deck a little bit more. If you are in you know, like crunch time or something, your back's against the wall, the opponent's got a lot of pressure coming at you, you don't quite have the combo together yet, Spell Reproduction can help out a lot. It is a giant minus to use this card, but generally when you're using it, you're winning the game, or it's, you know, a last-ditch effort to try to win the game. Past that, we have 2 copies of Soul Exchange. This is mostly for Monster Gate. However, if your opponent is playing some main deck problem monsters, you can use this alongside Mass Driver and Toon Cannon Soldier to take out whatever threat you need. I've done that a few times, but generally, since we aren't playing any more monsters other than Toon Cannon Soldier and Scapegoat that we can sack to Monster Gate, we just need more ways to fuel the Monster Gate, and that's where Soul Exchange comes in. This card's been great. You don't need a battle phase like ever with this deck. Yeah, I've actually never won through battle with it. I've gotten close a couple of times, but haven't quite gotten there. So the downside of Soul Exchange doesn't really come up with this deck. It's all upside. It's great. I've actually been pretty high on this card just in general recently. So yeah, very happy to have Soul Exchange in here to fuel the Monster Gates. Pretty awesome card. Past that, we have Soul Release. This is kind of like another Premature Burial. Basically, this is in here in case you get your DMOC or your Toon Cannon Soldier to the graveyard, you have an extra Dimension Fusion lying around, and you need to get them back. And also, like I said, when talking about Dimension Fusion, sometimes you get both of these in the graveyard, and then Soul Release plus Dimension Fusion just becomes two combo pieces, and that can help out a ton. So like you Soul Release both of these, you Dimension Fusion, get both of these back, get your Dimension Fusion back. Now the only other card that you need for your combo is Spell Economics. Pretty awesome. So 1 copy of Soul Release, pretty good. Last, but certainly not least, we have Serial Spell, and I love this card. Honestly, when Madcap showed me the list for the first time, I was like, oh yeah, Serial Spell, we're doing it. Huge fan of this card. This card has come up clutch so many times. So basically, for those of you who don't know what this card does, it is a quick play spell. You can only activate it when you activate one of your normal spell cards. Discard all the cards in your hand to the graveyard. The effect of this card becomes the same as the normal spell card. Worth noting, you don't have to pay the cost for the copied card. For the original normal spell that you put on the chain, you do have to pay the cost. So if you're playing Spell Reproduction and you want to serial spell it to get back 2 spells, you still have to discard 2 spells from your hand to the graveyard to activate this. Also with Serial Spell, you do have to discard at least 1 card for its cost, so you can't like play Pot of Greed and then Serial Spell with no other cards in hand. Serial Spell has come up just huge. Not only can it copy Graceful Charity, which is nuts, or Pot of Greed, which is also nuts, it can copy Spell Reproduction, which is awesome. I've had it copy Monster Gate, so I could get both of my pieces. Do have to worry about DMOC missing timing from that, but if you've got the right pieces going on, that's totally fine. You don't really have to worry. I've had it copy Reasoning when I had Premature Burial. There was actually a funny time in one of my, I think it was either Obelisk or Raw. I can't remember. I played Reasoning, serial spelled it. My opponent called both Reasonings right and then lost because I had a Premature Burial in hand. That I set, of course. I didn't discard it to the serial spell. But yeah, it's awesome. I've used it with spell reproduction to get back 2 combo pieces. Just a really, really awesome, really fun card. And it actually pulls its weight. Would never play more than one. Of course, you never want to see multiples of this card, but when it comes up, man, this card can come in clutch. So super happy to play Serial Spell here. I mentioned that we would get to why the deck is set up like this. Now that we're going to talk about the side, I'll let you know. Everything past Good Goblin Housekeeping, starting with Dimension Fusion all the way down to Serial Spell, these are all the cards you'll be siding out whenever you do the transition side. So you're going to go 15 of these for 15 of these. Sometimes what I like to do is leave in the full combo when I'm on the play. Just because it gives me, the higher chance to FTK, and bring in the Machine Gate side when I'm going second, or when I'm up against, like a trap heavy deck, something like Warriors or whatever, so I can bring in more protection with Mirror Force, Snatch Steal, Lightning Vortex, Jinzo, all of that good stuff. But there have been matches, and actually my plan in the Obelisk finals was to never side. I was actually just going to leave the full combo in, because I was aware of what my opponent was using in their side deck to combat the deck, and I decided that it was just more advantageous to remain on the combo than to actually side into the smokescreen, especially knowing that my opponent knows that I'm siding into the smokescreen. So there are times when you just don't side at all, and there are times where you do want to side this in and actually maybe leave it in for game 2 and 3. Just kind of depends on your read, what you see in the games, what the matchup is, stuff like that. So getting into the side, it is just like a regular Machine Gate side. You're bringing in 2 copies of Cyberstein because it's nuts, obviously. You go into Gatling Dragon a lot with this deck. Been into Master of Oz, Last Warrior. I've gone into Thousand Eyes Restrict before, Dark Balter, Ryu Senshi. It's not just Gatling Dragon, but more often than not, you are getting Gatling Dragon just to go with your limiter removals, remove your opponent's monsters, and just be able to get in some big attacks. From there, we've got a couple level 6s. We have Blowback Dragon, the worst card in GOAT format. And then we have Jinzo. Poor Blowback Dragon. I love this card, but it's just a running joke that you never flip heads. It's always tails with this thing, but that's okay. We still love you, Blowback Dragon. You still have a spot in the deck. And then we have a 7. We have Facilier Dragon, the Dual Mode Beast. You really don't need any other numbers. Like, your opponent is almost always going to call 8, especially if they don't know your transition side, which a lot of people don't. They're just going to snap call 8. Yeah, you do leave in the DMOC. There's a chance of hitting it. But more often than not, you're going to go into like a Cyberstein or the Fusilier, Jinzo, Blowback, Toon Cannon Soldier. You're probably going to get the effect of the Reasoning for value. So past that, of course, 3 copies of limiter removal. We are still a very fast kill the opponent deck, so we want all of the limiter removals. We have our 3rd copy of Reasoning. Once you side in all of the monsters with a bunch of different levels, Reasoning gets a lot better. So you do want all 3 copies post side. We have a Brain Control, Snatch Steal. Basically, these are, ways to use Monster Gate. You can sack your opponent's monsters for Blowback, Jinzo, all of that good stuff. And these can just help push a bunch of damage. So Snatch Steal, Brain Control make a whole lot of sense here. Lightning Vortex, way to clear problematic monsters. Not only are you siding into a deck that attacks, tries to get wins quickly through actual battle damage, but you are siding into a little bit more of an interactive deck. So Lightning Vortex can take out stuff like King Tiger, that may be posing a threat to you. Can't take out Spell Canceller or anything like that. Oh, it can take out Jowgen as well. Sometimes people will side in Jowgen against this deck because it is, obviously quite good. So Lightning Vortex, just a good little interactive piece. United We Stand, very good at pushing damage, of course. I've put this on Scapegoat tokens so much. So fun to use this card. Call of the Haunted, obviously, very good with DMOC. Anyway, it's pretty good with Toon Cannon Soldier to push some damage, but really good when you have Jinzo and Blowback Dragon in your deck, and you're sort of relying on Reasoning to get monsters out a little bit more often. So Call of the Haunted, really good to bring in with this package. And then we have a Mirror Force as just another interactive piece, sort of like Lightning Vortex, protect you from Dawn's Alluge, kill King Tigers. This can kill Spell Canceller and the likes. So Mirror Force, pretty good card here. So I got into the cards that were actually in the side, sort of explaining their purpose. The reason that you do this Machine Gate conversion side is that your opponent a lot of times is going to see almost your entire deck game one if you go off on a combo. And they're going to notice that you're not attacking. You only have 2 monsters in your deck. So a lot of times, they're going to remove their battle traps. They're not going to have their Sakuretsu armors, their mirror forces, and things of that nature in game 2. So you can just completely change it up on them and bring in the monsters and start attacking. This is one of the few decks that I think actually takes advantage, like full advantage, of a smokescreen side. And it's just really awesome. One of the tricks that I do whenever I play this like in paper is I will take my 15 card side and I will just shuffle the entire thing into the deck every single game. And then just go through the deck and pull out 15 cards. So you don't give the opponent any information on like if you're actually siding or not. You just show them the same thing every game and just, you know, kind of keep your opponent on the back foot. Try to gain some information, you know, from what they might be saying, what they're doing. Like there are some games where I've actually gone against what is sort of like intuitive with whether I side or not, because my opponent shows, oh, they actually did still leave in their mirror force. Okay, well maybe I'll go back to the combo. Or one time, one of my opponents told me that they're like, well, I can't actually do anything about the combo side of the deck, so I'm just going to side for the machine gate side. Someone actually told me that in a tournament, and I was like, oh, well, okay. I'm just gonna leave the combo in, and I played the combo all 3 games in that match, and that worked out because my opponent did leave in all the Sakuretsus, actually boarded one in, and all of that stuff. So you do sort of like while you're playing mind games, you want to pick up on little things that the opponent is doing, the information that they're giving you, to sort of inform your decision on which side of the deck you want to be on and sort of how you want to play it. That said, we've sort of gone over, you know, all of the card choices, sort of like how like each card sort of functions in the deck. We've gone over the siding and all that stuff. So for the people who haven't pieced it together from that for the combo, I do get a lot of questions on like how exactly does the win work? And it's pretty simple. This is basically an Exodia deck in the way that it functions. You just have to get the pieces together and you win the game. And those pieces are 1, you need DMOC. 2, you need either Toon Cannon Soldier or Mass Driver. Either will work for that combo piece. You need Dimension Fusion, and you need Spell Economics. That's it. Once you have assembled those with DMOC on the board, you'll win the game. You don't have to have all of them in hand, so you don't actually have to draw into all of them or search with like a Toon Table of Contents to get the Toon Cannon Soldier, for example. A lot of times you can be missing one piece, and you can just monster gate into DMOC, hope you flip over that last piece, get it back with the DMOC, and then you're good to go. You have the full combo. Of course, we do have spell reproduction here to help get some of those pieces. Like I said, Soul Release helps out sometimes with Dimension Fusion, getting back 2 pieces with DMOC and Toon Cannon Soldier. So it's not like Exodia where you like actually have to get all of the pieces in your hand. You do have other ways of finding those pieces later on, like sort of mid combo, which I think helps with the consistency of the deck quite a bit, and it's actually very nice to just, you know, just to be able to pick up your pieces on the way as you go. Once you have assembled those pieces, basically you have DMOC on the board, you use Toon Cannon Soldier or Mass Driver, you sacrifice it, which banishes it, you deal either 500 or 400 damage to your opponent, then you play your Spell Economics, and then you can play Dimension Fusion for free. You don't have to pay the 2,000 because of the Spell Economics. You get your DMOC back. DMOC gets Dimension Fusion back from the graveyard. You don't have to have 2 of these. It can get the Dimension Fusion that summoned it back because it does go to the graveyard. And you just repeat. That's it. That's the loop. Once you get to the combo, your opponent is dead. You don't actually have to play it out. It's not like Library FTK where you're sitting here for 15 to 20 minutes just watching your opponent combo because maybe they'll brick somewhere in there because it's not necessarily deterministic until you get to a certain point. Pretty cool deck. Obviously, just like any combo deck, you're going to trade power for consistency, and this is a very, very powerful deck. One of the most powerful decks in GOAT format, of course, because it can kill on turn 1. But like what happened to me in the finals of the Obelisk, the deck can fail you. Sometimes you draw a hand, and it's just like Monster Gate, Trunade, Dimension Fusion, Serial Spell, or whatever. And it's just like, well, what do I do? And you can't do anything. Sometimes you do just lose, but a lot of times you get those free wins. And for people who like to play the powerful decks and they like comboing people like me, hi, this is one that I would definitely recommend, especially because I think I touched on this a little bit earlier. This deck plays around a little bit of the interaction in the format. A lot of times my opponent will torrential the Dark Magician of Chaos, and that does nothing. It just gets banished. You get back your defusion. It doesn't matter when they do it during the combo, as long as you have the pieces. Torrential Tribute's not going to stop the DMOC. A lot of times Ring of Destruction's not going to stop the DMOC. Just destroying effects in general for monsters specifically. If your opponent has a Raigeki break and you haven't used a Heavy Storm or a Giant Trunade, obviously they can hit your Spell Economics, your Mass Driver, your Toon Cannon Soldier, or whatever. But this deck is pretty resilient and is more consistent than it appears. I think I want to emphasize it does have consistency issues. I'm not saying that this deck is super consistent. Obviously, if it was, it would just destroy the format, and this would be the only thing people would play. But common interaction you do have to watch out for, and this is one I actually didn't know when I picked up the deck. So shout out to Madcap again for telling me this. If Dark Magician of Chaos is sent like if you sack it to a Toon Cannon Soldier or a Mass Driver while it's face down, it's not banished. It actually goes to the graveyard. So you do have to worry about, or at least look out for stuff like Book of Moon. But you do have the Heavy Storm and the Giant Trunade, of course. But yeah, just being able to play through a lot of interaction that something like Library wouldn't be able to, I think makes this deck, if not the top FTK deck, one of the top for sure. And I look forward to playing it a lot more, because I know a lot of people just hate this stuff, but I genuinely have fun whenever I get to play the powerful stuff and win very quickly, especially in formats like this where a lot of people think, it's just like a huge grind fest or whatever. It's nice to just be able to pull this out and be like, well, maybe we can do other things. Maybe we can be powerful in this format as well. Yeah, that's the deck. If y'all have any other questions, of course, put those in the comments. I'll be happy to answer. Let's go ahead and get into a replay. All right, here we are with a replay. Rixa, I'm sorry. I know you hate this deck, but I knew that this replay would be a very good one to showcase both sides of the deck. We have the FTK, we have the Machine Gate side of the deck, both doing their thing here. You'll also notice that Rixa has Blast with Chain over here. Shout out to Rixa playing a Gearfried version of Warriors. It's just like one copy of Gearfried with 3 copies of Blast with Chain. I think it makes a lot of sense, actually. Blast with Chain, criminally underplayed card. This card's actually pretty good. But you notice looking at the hand over here, we already have 3 pieces in hand. We have a Toon Cannon Soldier, Dimension Fusion, Spell Economics. The only thing we have to get to is the DMOC. And obviously, we have this dead Toon Table of Contents, but that's okay. We also have Soul Release to work with our Dimension Fusion in case somehow we get the DMOC in the graveyard or something like that. So we've kind of... This is a really good hand. We're basically just, banking on a little bit of luck to find that last little piece. We draw Upstart Goblin for the turn, which is pretty nice. I'm going to Toon Table of Contents just to clear 2 dead cards out of the deck. Obviously, we can't get the other Toon Cannon Soldier, but sometimes you actually don't, and that's something that I didn't actually mention in the deck profile part of the video. A lot of times, whenever you're activating the Toon Table of Contents, you put 1 in hand and you just leave the Toon Cannon Soldier in the deck. There is a chance that you could still draw it off of your Upstart Goblin, your Pot of Greed, Graceful Charity, something like that, but it's a very low chance because there's only 1 in your hand, and playing around Trap Dust Shoot a lot of times can be very, very big. Obviously, you want your opponent to use Trap Dust Shoot if you have DMOC in hand, which has actually won me some games, by the way. It's kind of sweet. You do not want your opponent to put the Toon Cannon Soldier back in your deck. You want to be able to manipulate the deck in a way to where you're guaranteed to get the DMOC. But here, it doesn't really matter because we already have it in hand. But that is the play that I would have made if I was presented with a hand that didn't have the Toon Cannon Soldier. Here, we're going to play Upstart Goblin. We draw Reasoning, which is actually just perfect. I know I spent a good time in the deck profile portion of the video just kind of shitting all over this card, saying it's kind of awkward to have whenever you have like the FTK part of the deck in. But it's going to work out perfectly here. Don't care if my opponent calls 4. Don't care if my opponent calls 8. They're dead either way. And so we're going to play Reasoning. Opponent calls 8. I've got a billion cards going to the graveyard here, so we're going to try to get through this as quickly as possible. Yep. Get all the way down to 4 cards in deck. I summon DMOC. Well, I'm sorry. My opponent called 8. I just got a little ahead of myself here. I think I say that in chat. Yeah, getting ahead of myself. I know the game is over, so sorry. But we do have the soul release, so DMOC out of here. Toon Cannon Soldier, Spell Economics, Dimension Fusion. Get this DMOC onto the field, and yeah, that would have been the entire loop. DMOC just grabs back Dimension Fusion, and yeah, just sack it to the Toon Cannon Soldier. Keep playing that Dimension Fusion over and over. Obviously, with this being an FTK deck, you all know it can win on turn 1 with the combo, and yeah, that's a pretty good showcase of what it does, but it's also a pretty good showcase of why we're not sitting here playing a bunch of matches for the video. Yeah, it's just kind of like that over and over with the FTK side of the deck. But here, you'll notice I sided into the Machine Gate side of the deck for Game 3. Rixa is playing a version of Warriors, so just wanted to go ahead and go into that, especially since I was in the FTK for 2 games in a row. Thought it was pretty advantageous to just go into this. So very good hand. Rixa opens up without a Solemn Judgment, which is nice. Just summons the Blade Knight. Doesn't set the Ring or the Needle Ceiling. That makes sense to me. Just sets the MST, the Blast with Chain. So Blast with Chain's not really doing a whole lot here. Yeah, it can boost the Blade Knight up to 2100. That's not a big deal. MST can be pretty annoying though, but this hand does not care about MST. We actually draw a Toon Table of Contents, which is very, very nice to go along with our Monster Gate, our Reasoning, and our Pot of Greed. Just get the dead cards out of the deck, get the Toon Cannon Soldier out of the deck so we can't hit it with a Reasoning or Monster Gate. Just very nice here. I'm going to go ahead and lead on Pot of Greed, just to inform my plays a little bit more. We draw another Reasoning and a Cyberstein. I actually didn't want to draw the Cyberstein. I wanted it in the deck just to have a higher chance of hitting it. But I'm going to go ahead and lead on Reasoning. Like, I have so many cards as backup here that I think it's awesome. The opponent's probably going to call 8. And you'll see Rixa actually does call 8, so I have a Blowback, Toon Cannon Soldier, and a Cyberstein already out of the deck, so my possible hits are Cyberstein, Jinzo, DMOC, and Facilier. So I have a 25% chance of hitting Jinzo, which would just be nuts here, assuming, you know, my opponent's back row is all traps, which is a high likelihood, so I think that's great. Facilier, totally fine. If I really want to, I can sack it off for a Blowback Dragon. I can always Reasoning again afterward if something happens. And I can just kind of just keep going with this. So I think it's totally fine to play this a little aggressively here. A lot of times you'll hold if you don't have any backup or whatever, but you'll see I go straight into Jinzo. I guess I'm good at this game or something. I'm going to throw down Reasoning again. Rix is going to think. It calls 8, goes right into Cyberstein, so getting a little lucky that we didn't hit the DMOC, but everything turned off our opponent's back row. We know there's an MST over here that's not turned off, but there's a Blast with Change, it's kind of useless. Activate Cyberstein. I'm actually going to go into Master of Oz this time. I know I said mostly you go into Gatling Dragon, and that is true. But I don't actually need to remove the Blade Knight with the Gatling Dragon effect. And I know I'm just going to get rid of the Cyberstein with a Monster Gate, so I don't really have any monsters on my side that I want to get rid of if I happen to flip more than one heads. So we'll just go into the big boy, the old Koala Kangaroo, Mr. Master of Oz. And then we're going to Monster Gate away the Cyberstein. And you know, our opponent called 8 2 times in a row. And, well, they needed to call it a 3rd time, but unfortunately, they don't get to call a level for Monster Gate. I just get whatever I want. So, DMOC comes down. I'm actually going to get Heavy Storm here, because I know I have the win, and so I'm just going to go ahead and Heavy Storm, just to make sure there's no, like, I don't know, maybe there's a Book of Moon, and they're wanting to, like, book my Jinzo at the beginning of battle, and then they have a Mirror Force or something like that. Heavy Storm is gonna just basically ensure that I get the win here. Though if they do Book of Moon the Jinzo or the Master of Oz, the game potentially could go on. I don't think I actually have lethal from there. I haven't normal summoned, so maybe I do. I could probably just summon out the Toon Cannon Soldier or something. I haven't really done the math, but because it's not, you know, super relevant here. But I have the United We Stand. Just put it on the Jinzo. Why not? I guess, yeah, I guess that does diversify my damage the most. To play around Kuhb, which could be relevant, but you're going to see an FTK from the FTK side of the deck, and I guess it's not technically an FTK because I didn't go first, but I did win on my first turn with the machine side of the deck through a little bit of interaction. Not really. I guess Blast with Chain and MST is not really doing a whole lot here. Yeah, showcasing both sides of the deck. That's what it does. I like it a lot. So if this is a sort of deck that you are interested in, would highly recommend it. I think it's a lot of fun, but yeah, that's going to be the video. I hope you guys enjoyed. We'll be back with the next one.